February 5th, 1954, Paris. A 71-year-old woman stands backstage at 31 Rue Cambon. Her hands, those legendary hands that once dressed Parisian society, now trembling slightly. Not from age, but from something far more human. Fear. She's been away for 15 years. The world has moved on without her. In the audience sit the same fashion critics who once crowned her a revolutionary. Now they wait, pins poised like executioner's blades. The first model steps out wearing look number 5, a jersey suit, the number blazoned across it like a battle cry. Or perhaps a prayer. The room falls silent, stone silent. This is Coco Chanel's comeback show, and in that suffocating quiet, you can almost hear the ghost of another designer. A man who died just 4 months earlier, leaving behind an empire built on everything she despised. Christian Dior, the man who put women back in corsets while she was in exile. The man who made fashion feel like a fairy tale when she insisted it should feel like freedom. This is the story of two houses, two philosophies, two versions of what a woman could be in the decade that couldn't decide if it wanted to look backward or forward. This is Chanel versus Dior. And the winner? Well, that depends on what you think fashion is really for. Rewind to February 12th, 1947, another February in Paris, but this time the air crackles with different electricity. Christian Dior, a 42-year-old late bloomer who'd spent the war years designing dresses for Nazi officers' wives, we don't talk about that part much, is about to show his first collection. Backstage at 30 Avenue Montaigne, he's surrounded by yards and yards of fabric, taffeta, tulle, enough material to make the post-war fabric rationing board weep. His financial backer, textile magnate Marcel Boussac, had given him carte blanche. "Use as much as you want," he'd said. "Make them dream again." The first model emerges in what would become the bar suit, a cream shantung jacket nipped so tightly at the waist, it looks like architecture, not clothing. Below it, a black wool skirt that contains, wait for it, 15 yards of fabric. 15 yards, in a world still clutching ration cards. Harper's Bazaar editor Carmel Snow gasps, "My dear Christian," she'll famously say, "your dresses have such a new look." And just like that, fashion had its new king. A man who looked at the masculine, practical silhouettes women had worn through the war and said, "No, you've suffered enough. Let me turn you into flowers." His sister Catherine, the one who'd survived Ravensbrück concentration camp, the one whose secret rose garden during the occupation would inspire Miss Dior perfume, she understood this impulse. Sometimes after surviving hell, you need beauty like you need bread. But here's what the fairy tale forgets. Not everyone wanted to be a flower. While Dior was conquering the world, opening boutiques on Fifth Avenue, dressing Princess Margaret, accepting the Legion of Honor like some sort of fashion monarch, Gabrielle Chanel sat in her suite at the Ritz, watching her life's work get erased. Let me paint you a picture of Chanel in the early 1950s. She's in her late 60s, living in self-imposed exile. The woman who freed women from corsets, who made jersey elegant, who turned costume jewelry into chic, who convinced the world that a suntan was sophisticated. She's become yesterday's news. She'd closed her fashion house in 1939 at the outbreak of war. "This is no time for fashion," she'd declared, though that was only part of the truth. The real story was messier, darker. The war years? We don't talk about those either. Her German officer lover, Hans Günther von Dinklage, the murky dealings, the fact that she spent the occupation living at the Ritz while her Jewish partners, the Wertheimers, fled, the mysterious trip to Madrid in 1941 that may or may not have been a mission for German intelligence. History, like fashion, has selective memory, but here's what kills her. It's not the exile. It's not even the whispers about collaboration. It's watching women squeeze back into corsets, watching them teeter on Roger Vivier's stilettos, so important to Dior that Vivier's name appeared on every shoe sole beside Dior's own, watching them disappear under mountains of crinoline. Dior doesn't dress women, she'll tell anyone who'll listen. He upholsters them. She sees his new look spreading like a beautiful plague. Department stores can't keep copies in stock. Women are taking out loans to afford the real thing. Fashion magazines speak of nothing else. In 1950, Dior shows before Queen Elizabeth and Princess Margaret in London, cementing his royal patronage. By 1954, he's presenting collections at Blenheim Palace, turning fashion into high society theater. Meanwhile, Chanel watches from the sidelines as everything she fought for gets buried under yards of tulle. The practical elegance, the freedom of movement, the idea that a woman could be chic without being tortured by her clothes. By 1953, she's had enough. Fashion needs saving from its own fairy tale. And if she has to rise from the dead to do it, so be it. Chanel's comeback wasn't a whim. It was a military campaign. For months before that February 1954 show, she worked in secret. She called back her premier, the heads of her workrooms. Many had scattered to other houses, some even to Dior. She lured them back with promises and money and something more powerful, the chance to be part of a revolution. Again. Her friend Helene Gordon-Lazareff, editor of Elle magazine, visited during preparations. Lazareff had been in the resistance, had seen women prove their strength. She looked at Chanel's simple suits and saw sweet revenge against what she called the grande bourgeoisie represented by Christian Dior. "You're not just designing clothes," Lazareff told her. "You're designing armor." So we return to that February evening in 1954. The fashion world's most powerful editors and buyers packed into the mirrored salon at Rue Cambon. Chanel watches from the stairs, hidden but seeing everything through her famous mirrors. The models parade her new collection: boxy jackets with braid trim, straight skirts that end at the knee, soft tweeds in navy, beige, and that particular shade of pink that will become signature Chanel. Everything Dior is not. Where Dior creates hourglass silhouettes, Chanel offers rectangles. Where he uses 20 yards of fabric, she uses 3. Where he demands corsets and crinolines, she offers clothes you can actually move in. The first look, that jersey suit marked with the number 5, sets the tone. This is fashion stripped of pretense, reduced to its elegant essence. The French press? They savage her. Retrograde, a ghost from the past. Chanel used to be for the femme du monde, one critic writes. Now she designs for the concierge. Another dismisses it as 1939 warmed over. She reads every review, files them away, and keeps working. But the Americans? They get it. While the Parisians are writing obituaries for her career, buyers from Bergdorf Goodman and Saks are placing orders. They see what the Parisians are too blinded by Dior's glamour to notice. Women are changing. They're working. They're traveling. They need clothes that move with them, not against them. Bettina Ballard from American Vogue writes a different kind of review. She's designing for a woman who doesn't exist yet, but she will. You have to understand, this wasn't just about hemlines. This was about two completely different ideas of what it meant to be a woman in the 1950s. Dior built his house like a luxury ocean liner. Everything perfect, everything controlled. He employed 1,200 people. His atelier ran like clockwork. Models were sewn into dresses, literally sewn, because God forbid a zipper should interrupt the line. His new look wasn't just fashion, it was a whole world view. Women as precious objects, beautiful, delicate, expensive. After the horror of war, he offered fantasy, escape, a return to a femininity so extreme it almost felt like rebellion. "I wanted to make women beautiful," he said, "to give them back their mystery." But Chanel? She looked at mystery and called it a cage with prettier bars. Her philosophy was devastatingly simple. Fashion should serve the woman, not the other way around. Her jackets had chains sewn into the hems, not for decoration, but for weight, so they'd hang properly. Her bags had shoulder straps because women needed their hands free. Her tweeds were soft but sturdy because life required both comfort and armor. Fashion fades, she'd say. Style remains. Two philosophies, two futures, and between them, every woman in the Western world trying to figure out which one she was supposed to be. Here's what's fascinating. Both houses were reshaping fashion, but in completely opposite ways. Dior pioneered fashion as empire. By 1950, the House of Dior was responsible for 75% of France's fashion exports. 3/4. From one house that didn't exist 4 years earlier. He had licensing deals everywhere. Dior stockings, Dior gloves, Dior lipstick. He understood something Chanel would resist for years. Fashion wasn't just about clothes anymore. It was about selling a dream in every possible form. His boutique on Avenue Montaigne became a pilgrimage site. The salons were decorated like a Louis XVI fantasy, gray and white, crystal chandeliers, fresh flowers everywhere. Women would fly from New York just for fittings. Princess Margaret would clear her schedule for his shows. He'd lecture at the Sorbonne. Imagine, a dressmaker teaching at France's most prestigious university. The shows themselves were theater. Models didn't just walk, they performed. Each dress had a name, a story. Soirée de Paris, Romantique, Coup de théâtre. He turned fashion shows into fashion dreams. In May 1956, Dior published his autobiography, Dior by Dior, solidifying his status as not just a designer, but a cultural icon. That same year, he released Diorissimo, a lily-of-the-valley fragrance that captured spring in a bottle. Meanwhile, Chanel was playing a longer game. She knew she couldn't compete with Dior's spectacle, so she didn't try. Instead, she focused on creating pieces that would outlast trends. In February 1955, exactly a year after her comeback, she launched the 2.55 bag, named for the date. Today, it's an icon worth thousands. Then, it was revolutionary. A bag with a shoulder strap, quilted leather that referenced jockeys' jackets, a burgundy lining that matched the color of the convent uniforms from her orphan childhood. Every detail had meaning. The chain handle wasn't just practical. It was inspired by the chains the nuns at Aubazine wore. The CC logo wasn't just initials. It was interlocking, infinite, unbreakable. The same year, she introduced Pour Monsieur, her first men's fragrance, expanding her empire in a different direction than Dior's feminine fantasy. By 1956, her iconic trimmed tweed suit had emerged. The collarless jacket with braided trim and gilt buttons that would become the Chanel uniform. While Dior was building an empire of dreams, Chanel was creating a language of reality. By 1956, both houses are at their peak, but time is running differently for each. Dior publishes his autobiography, Dior by Dior. He's on the cover of Time magazine. The new arbiter of style. He has everything: fame, fortune, the devotion of women worldwide. But watch him closely in photographs from this period. The eyes are tired, the smile forced. He's working himself to death, literally, showing 4 collections a year, flying constantly, trying to be everywhere at once. His doctor warns him to slow down. His heart is weak, but there's always one more collection, one more triumph to chase. October 24th, 1957. Dior is in Italy, taking a rare vacation. He's playing cards at a spa in Montecatini when it happens. A heart attack, swift and final. The king of fashion dies holding a bad hand, which feels like the kind of irony Chanel might appreciate. He's only 52 years old. The fashion world convulses. Who could possibly replace Christian Dior? The answer shocks everyone. His 21-year-old assistant, Yves Saint Laurent, a nervous boy from Algeria who'd won a fashion contest and caught Dior's eye. The succession happens so fast it feels preordained. One king dead, another crowned before the body's cold. Saint Laurent's first collection for Dior, the Trapeze line, is a hit. But here's the thing about inheriting an empire. Sometimes the throne is too big for the heir. And across town, Coco Chanel watches with interest. The boy has talent, she admits, but he's trying to be Dior, and there's only one way that ends. By the late 1950s, the fashion world has split into camps. You're either a Dior woman or a Chanel woman, fantasy or reality, flower or force of nature. But here's what's remarkable. Both houses survive. Both thrive. Because maybe, just maybe, women needed both options: the dream and the independence, the fantasy and the freedom. Dior's aesthetic evolution continued even after his death. The A line, the H line, the Y line, each season bringing a new silhouette, a new way to sculpt the female form. It was fashion as reinvention, fashion as possibility. But Chanel? She kept making the same jacket, the same skirt, the same bag, and somehow, through sheer force of will and the mysterious alchemy of true style, she made repetition feel like revolution. Fashion is architecture, Dior had said. It is a matter of proportions. Fashion is not something that exists in dresses only, Chanel countered. Fashion is in the sky, in the street. Fashion has to do with ideas, the way we live, what is happening. Two philosophies, both right, both necessary. So who won the 1950s? Walk into any Chanel boutique today and you'll find the 2.55 bag, the tweed jacket, the camellia flower, every element virtually unchanged from what Coco showed in 1954. Her comeback, initially met with silence, became the template for forever. Walk into Dior and you'll find evolution, constant change, new creative directors reinterpreting the founder's vision every few years. The only constant is the bar jacket, that architectural marvel from 1947, remade and reimagined but never abandoned. Maybe that's the answer. Dior won the decade, the magazine covers, the glory, the immediate adoration. But Chanel? She won the century. Or maybe the real winners were the women who refused to choose, who wore Dior to galas and Chanel to board meetings, who understood that liberation sometimes looks like a suit and sometimes looks like a ball gown. There's a photograph from 1957 taken shortly before Dior's death. He's in his studio at Avenue Montaigne, surrounded by bolts of fabric, sketches scattered across every surface. But he's not looking at any of it. He's staring out the window, and his expression is unreadable. What was he thinking about? His legacy? His next collection? Or was he perhaps remembering something his sister Catherine once told him about her roses, how they bloomed most beautifully when they had to fight for sun? Across the river, Coco Chanel is probably in her workroom too. She'll work until she's 87, dying on January 10, 1971 in her suite at the Ritz. They say she was working on the spring collection until the end, that she died with scissors in her hand. It's probably not true, but it should be. Her last words reportedly were, "You see, this is how you die." Even death for Chanel was something to be done with style. Two designers, two philosophies, two different kinds of immortality. One built a house that would outlive him, that would continue to dream new dreams with each season. The other built a style so definitive it made change irrelevant. One dressed women for the world as they wished it was. The other dressed them for the world as it is, but with enough elegance to make reality bearable. The 1950s asked fashion an impossible question. Should clothes make women more feminine or more free? Dior and Chanel gave opposite answers, and in doing so, they gave women something priceless, the power to choose. Because here's the truth neither designer could have admitted. Women needed both of them, needed the dream and the reality, the flower and the suit, the fantasy of femininity and the fact of freedom. They needed Dior to remind them they were worthy of beauty, of excess, of taking up space with yards of fabric and clouds of perfume. They needed to be told it was okay to be decorative, to be desired, to be unproductive in a world that increasingly valued only productivity. And they needed Chanel to remind them they were more than decoration, that they could be elegant and independent, that they deserved clothes that worked as hard as they did. That style wasn't about following rules, but about knowing which rules to break. The great irony is that both designers, in their own way, were offering liberation. Dior liberated women from the dreariness of wartime austerity. Chanel liberated them from the prison of post-war femininity. Both were necessary. Both were revolutionary. Fashion would never be simple again. Thank God for that.